Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to discuss a fairly controversial topic with you guys, and I want people to understand that, as most of you know, I'm pretty hard-line right-wing. I am not part of the religious right. I am a true conservative. I am a hard-ass right-winger. I am a gun-toting fiscal conservative who believes in the absolute freedom to keep and bear arms. I don't even believe in background checks. I don't believe in any of that stuff. Every citizen should have an AR-15. Every registered voter should have an AR-15. That's my stance on it. So let's get that out of the way. I'm not coming at you guys from some sort of liberal pussy ideology here. I'm coming at you guys purely from a crime prevention and, more importantly, an economic, fiscal, conservative perspective when I say that complete federal legalization of marijuana could be used to balance our budget on multiple levels, and no fiscal conservative would ever support the prohibition of marijuana in this country. You would think that we would have learned our lesson from Prohibition. Most of us grew up watching all of these shows about Prohibition, reading all about Prohibition in the history books. Everything from watching The Untouchables with the Al Capone stuff to this newer show, Boardwalk Empire. And this has just been part of our history forever. This is what caused the creation of the mob. Prohibition took a revenue-generating business, the creation of alcohol, which was an enormous, absolutely enormous industry in this country, and it took away all the tax revenue we were generating off of it, all of the liquor taxes that were there, all of the the businesses who owned it paying their taxes. All of that revenue went away, and it created organized crime of a level that was completely unprecedented in this country. No one had ever seen organized crime of this level. It brought in international crime rings. It created the mob. We had Irish crime rings coming in even. We had people coming over from Europe. Some of their organized crime was coming across, including even the IRA being involved in importing whiskey into this country. An entire branch of law enforcement was created to deal with this situation, and we lost hundreds of police officers. We had all sorts of killings go on as a result of taking this highly desired commodity and outlawing it. So it went from generating an enormous amount of revenue to generating an enormous amount of crime and costing the taxpayers a fortune in law enforcement, harm to the public, prisons, jails, everything. It costs us a fortune. And this is the exact same thing we've seen as marijuana. And marijuana is arguably probably the most harmless drug out there. We could argue that things like cocaine or whatever are probably on par with alcohol, maybe even worse. However, the same could be said of even some of those. Those are drugs that we need to seriously consider decriminalizing and look at the tax revenue generating and job creating potential of all of these substances. But obviously the highest on the list is going to be marijuana. All drug decriminalization is something we should look at in the long term, but at least from a financial perspective, marijuana is the big one. Now, you hear people like Trump talking about closing the border, which at this point it's fair to say that we should do just to shut out the drug cartels, to shut out all the illegal immigration. If we were to close the southern border, the money that we would save by doing it would more than pay for the wall, machine gun bunkers, people demand it, just that we would save in tax revenue by closing the border. It would balance itself out. However, what it would also do is cut out the competition for domestic marijuana product. So basically, by cutting out the competition, if you look at what happened in Colorado, Colorado has generated an enormous amount of revenue, an enormous amount of jobs, and it is paid for all sorts of services just from the taxation in this one state with a fairly small population of marijuana. Look what it's done in that one state. What happens when we cut the competition out completely? We shut out Mexico. We shut out the drug cartels. All of the crime that comes with that goes away when we build that wall. Then we deal with all the ones who are already over here, who are here illegally, all the organized crime. We can focus on that and clearing out what's already there with no more coming in, no more jumping back and forth across the border. We can wipe out these drug cartels almost overnight. Our biggest block of crime creation is gone at that point. It's done. And we've cut out the competition. So you cut out all the competition. Every state can do this. And you now have people who can compete with each other. Different states, different regions are going to compete for different strands, different qualities, and the market will pretty much dictate the cost. It will dictate everything. We could slap a tax on it. And when you look at it, the initial thing, obviously there's the taxation potential. We could slap a 10% sin tax on it, like we do with liquor, which might even be less than 10%, but we could slap a sin tax on it, or a luxury tax if we don't want to make it a religious thing, which we need a new revenue generating source at this point. This country is broke. We are $20 trillion in debt, and we make less than 20 trillion a year in total revenue, and we continue to borrow more every year. Even if we stopped all spending, we shut down every single government program in existence, every government subsidy, the military, roads. If we shut down everything and we took all of our taxation revenue towards our current deficit that we owe, we still couldn't pay it off in 5 years. We can't pay it off. We would still have trillions left in debt. So that's how bad of a situation we're in. But if you take something like marijuana, which is an extremely highly desired product, that something like at least 20% of the population already uses it illegally, it's relatively innocuous. And let's keep in mind, we don't really care about health, guys. I mean, McDonald's and Coca-Cola are illegal in this country to feed to your children. So let's not get on any sort of soapbox like we give two shits at all about the health of our people. I mean, we feed them poison and it's perfectly legal. I mean, if you think marijuana is going to kill you faster than Coca-Cola, I got bad news for you folks. So really it comes down to people's religious beliefs. It's a completely religious thing. And this is where I break with the religious right, one of my issues, and why I consider myself a true conservative, a true hardline right-winger, not a member of the religious right. I'm looking at a fairly harmless product that could generate an enormous amount of revenue. And it doesn't even end anywhere near taxation, the direct taxation of the product. Look at the job creation. We still have an absolutely enormous unemployment rate. In fact, many of the people who are unemployed have a love of marijuana. Why don't we get them involved in growing it, producing it, and selling it? We start cutting welfare back because we will be able to cut welfare back because we have all of these new jobs. And again, that particular demographic, the people who are on welfare, would actually be a demographic who would very possibly be interested in working with it, because in fact many of them already sell it, they already smoke it, they already utilize it. People who are on benefits already. Let's take a totally legal farming product and turn it into a source of job creation for them, get them off of welfare benefits, and then they can start paying taxes. We could reduce our unemployment dramatically with an entirely new, massive, highly demanded industry. So we cut unemployment, create new jobs, therefore we need less taxes being sent towards welfare, and then we've now created new streams of income. We've created new jobs that can then be utilized to tax those also. So with that one move there, by creating the new jobs, we've cut spending and we've increased revenue. So now we've done two things with it that can massively impact the budget. They can massively impact the budget. So we've got the direct taxation of the product. We have creation of new jobs to reduce unemployment and create new jobs that we can then tax. And then there's the law enforcement factor. All of the drug cartels, all of the gangs. You've got to remember that out of the murders in this country, 80% of all murders inside the United States are gang related. All gangs are directly involved with distribution of illegal drugs. Pretty much every gang in the country. So where's your source of your violence? Illegal drugs. The war on drugs actually creates it, because then the gangs kill each other. They oftentimes get in fights with police. You remove this illegal product and make it a legal crop that we produce and sell over the counter. What happens with all of this gang violence? What happens with this need for law enforcement to deal with it? We won't need quite as many police officers. We won't need as many jails. We won't need as many prisons, because we've removed an entire segment of crime and turned it into a legitimate form of business that we can generate revenue on. Now, as far as something like cocaine, we could also do the same thing. And again, people would argue, well, we can't take an addictive product like that and turn it into a regular product. Well, we did that with cigarettes. We've done that with Coca-Cola. Refined sugars have been found to be just as addictive in the brain as cocaine at this point. That's a normal product you can give to your children. So what's the difference? It does cause illness. It does reduce lifespan. So at a certain point, you've got to step back and say, well, why is this one illegal and this one is a felony? When we could be taking any of these products and be turning them into sources of revenue through multiple pathways and reduce crime. But again, that's a whole other topic. The main one we want to deal with in this conversation is going to be marijuana. And if you guys run the numbers, crunch the numbers, and look at all of this, and particularly look at the difference we had with Prohibition and the history of it, realize that marijuana use is just as high as alcohol use is in this country. And we saw Prohibition. We saw what happened with Prohibition before. We're seeing the exact same thing now with marijuana in this country. It is largely responsible. It actually being illegal is something that we can no longer financially afford, and legalizing it could actually be part of the whole process that is essential to balancing our budget at this point. And it is a product that the American people want, and that the American people demand, and that the American people are going to use whether you legalize it or not. So at a certain point, a true conservative who believes in the will of the people, who believes in a free market, that believes in capitalism, has to step back and look at this and go, wow, this is actually a legitimate business that is highly demanded by the population that we just outlawed against the consent of the majority of the people. And it is breaking us financially. We can't afford to keep it illegal. We could actually balance our budget, which is what most conservatives have been trying to do and want to do, with this basic change. This one change could facilitate the entire thing in the long term. So just something to think on, guys. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.